Hi there, I'm Tim Irvine.
And I'm Stacy Irvine. Welcome to the Totum Wellness Podcast.
We are thrilled to have Heather Bansley with us today. Heather, you are an accomplished Olympian 3 times, Rio, Tokyo, and most recently this summer in Paris with Sophie as your beach volleyball partner. Pretty incredible. Career at U of T in volleyball, and then you turned pro in 2007, which is pretty incredible as well. So it's a long pro career for you. Fantastic. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. And what does that look like? How do you, what makes you the Defensive Player of the Year? Because that's pretty incredible.
Geez, I think it's just a really special award because the people who nominate you, they're your peers, they're the other athletes, the coaches, the referees, so to be honored in that community and is really special. And then to have been recognized 3 times, I mean, how did I get there? I think it's, it took, obviously years and years. And it was just, it's not something I think of achieving, wanting that goal. Of course, it's great to be honored, but it's just sort of like a product of all that practice that you put in and wanting to kind of be the best on the court. And as somebody who's, an undersized athlete in my sport, I would say, I really emphasize the things that I could do well and ball control. So it's sort of for defense, it kind of fell into that category for me. I knew I wasn't going to be, I'm not the tallest person. I'm not going to, have the highest spike reach or anything like that. But I was ball control, that's what I'm good at.
I love it.
I can control that. So I'm going to try to be the best at that.
Very cool. And I know that there's a special mindset for people who are so good at defense. I think it's, defense wins championships is the phrase. And I agree with that. I think it's a really special skill. And of course, you're also a dog person, which is something that really
we are
love.
as well.
Yes.
I saw some pictures of your dog. It's a female.
Yeah. So I have a little rescue dog. Her name's Terry. She's a 3-legged pit bull mix. So she's my tripod, Terry Fox, Terry the tripod. So,
That is adorable. She's so cute.
Yeah, she's great. I'd been wanting a dog for so long. I loved dogs growing up. And then I always kind of said, okay, after volleyball. And then it just got to the point where I was like, I don't know when volleyball is going to be done and I want to make this work. So yeah, so I adopted her in 2018 and, just kind of made it work with all my traveling and which has been great. I have a really supportive family and friends and, just she's easy. I can kind of pass her along and like dogs, they just kind of make being home better. And as an outdoor athlete, she makes going outside in the winter so much better. I think that was one thing that I really miss in the winter is being outside every single day and then kind of having a dog, they force you to get outside. And, I just kind of found a new appreciation for winter, actually getting a dog.
Right.
Good for you. That's great. I
Yes.
think we've found the same thing as well. Coming from out west, where it's a lot colder, but this, humidity in the winter is terrible, and so we didn't do a lot of stuff outside.
There's a lot more gray days here, and that changed for us when we started doing marathons, and we were training people for marathons. So winter became a big training time. But I did know that after we started that, winter got way better by just getting yourself out the door every day. And then the dogs. Now, of course, we have to be out multiple times a day with them, which is great too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Paris, 3rd Olympics. Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment. What did you find was different with Paris compared to the other Olympics?
I think it's so easy to compare it to Tokyo, which was my second Olympics, because people remember Tokyo was postponed in 2020 because
Right.
of the pandemic
Right.
and got pushed to 2021
Yeah.
and still was sort of under a lot of restrictions. So there was, no spectators, no family, no friends, anybody allowed in the venue. We were playing in these huge stadiums that were completely empty. We could only, we had to kind of keep our distance from everybody and only go from, our competition venue back to the village and kind of just in between those. So just totally different experience when I think about Tokyo from that perspective. So for me, being able to compete again and have family and friends come and support and just the whole world be able to come and our venue lots of people probably saw, was right underneath the Eiffel Tower.
It was stunning.
We had the best venue. It was just, it was
so
iconic.
gorgeous.
And then, you hear it time again from a lot of athletes, like going into your second or multiple Olympics, like you're just that much more mentally prepared for the pressure, the stress, everything, the media, all of that comes with it. And so I think when I look back on my first Olympics, I was just sort of oblivious to it all. So there is something to be said about having the opportunity to go to your second, your third Olympics and being prepared. I think we'll get into it a little bit more later, but just, I had stepped away from the sport for a couple of years after Tokyo, and then being able to come back and qualify and compete again, was just incredible for me personally, on a few different levels, just to be able to do that, achieve that goal again. And then
it's huge.
Yeah. And have my family then kind of come and support me and see me in my last kind of hurrah, I will say. It was just really special on a personal note.
How is your approach different from 2016? Obviously, the full fans and that's the sort of thing in Rio, and all that experience that you had for Paris. Like, what changed for you? What are a couple of key things?
So a few things. Typically in amateur sports, that are competing at the Olympics, we call it, quads. Like you have 4 years, every 4 years are the Olympics, right. And your Olympic campaign kind of comes down to those 4 years. So when I think about Rio, I had just missed out on qualifying in Paris in 2012. And so I kind of took that time to reevaluate and say, okay, how am I going to get myself to Rio? And so using those 4 years to develop a partnership with my teammate and push towards Rio. And then when I think about Paris, I had taken those 2 years off. The quad then turned into 3 years because Tokyo had been pushed back a year. So then teams were then trying to qualify or start new partnerships in a 3-year time period, which was already shortened. And then for me, it was, because I had taken a couple of years off, it was really only 1 year. So when I think about preparation, I go from like 4 years of being able to prepare for Rio and being super hyper focused during all those 4 years versus to like a condensed 1 year.
Right.
But I would say like I had so much experience playing because at that point, it was my fourth Olympic quad, trying to qualify for the Olympics. And so I was just able to, I think, rely on my, I guess, experience and be okay with where I was physically. I think that was one of the biggest hurdles for me, was knowing that I wasn't in my best physical condition or where I wanted to be because I had taken time off, but also knowing, okay, maybe just mentally as an athlete, as a person, outside of the sport, I needed that time away, just to be in the right mindset, to appreciate where I was, to know how badly I missed the sport and how badly I wanted it. So I think it was sort of a balance there.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps when you said that. That it is really special because to have the time away, it's something I think a lot of athletes, we work with a lot of elite athletes, and it's that constant push. You're just trying to max. You do have recovery and you have weeks off, but even the recovery and the weeks off, you're still like, okay, I've got these 2 weeks, and you're almost trying to max your recovery too. Like, I got to fit in all the things of a normal life that I have not been able to do in my like kind of short break. But I really believe in that. When I work with young athletes and I'm coaching them and we're doing the hard work, there's something really tangible about the privilege to be there and letting them know, like, this is all going to be worth it. And when you get there, you're going to know that you pushed yourself, you got to this stage, and then being there is amazing. No matter what happens, no matter how you finish, just being there, being in the village, all of these things, these experiences, I think that is fantastic.
Absolutely. And I think you said a few things that really resonate with me there. And I think as athletes, and especially as competitive athletes, like you said, we're trying to like maximize our downtime, or, even if we have time off, we're like, well, what are other people doing on their time off, kind of thing, or you start to feel guilty about taking that time off, or it's like, how do you even like, yes, physically take that time off, but mentally take that time off, and yeah, as an athlete, as I get older, some of my priorities starting to shift, and you're right, like, okay, how do I cram in all that family and relationship time in those 2 weeks? And so it's, that's become more of a priority for me. And I realize the importance of that as I've matured as an athlete. And yeah, I think in terms of like the decisions, in terms of what you're sort of giving up, if you will, I always kind of approached it. It's like, it is a choice because I'm choosing not to, see my friends or go to this engagement or this party or whatever, because I'm an athlete, and it's not a sacrifice. I think it's more of a choice because I'm, like, and that's what makes it so rewarding when you get to be on top of that podium, when you get
Right.
to represent Canada at the Olympics. It's worthwhile in the end. But then even like for me, when I made the decision to return as an athlete to sport and say, all right, let's give it a go. Like, come on, Sophie, we're going to try to qualify in a year for the Olympics. It was a choice that I knew that I was happy with no matter the outcome. So I said, I'm so happy that I came back, regardless if we
Right.
qualify or not. I'm really happy that I gave it this go because I realized how much I miss the sport, how much I love it. I needed to come back to really kind of close that door on my sport chapter, and just all of that, like the time off and then the coming back really gave me that perspective. Yeah.
Digging into that, call it retirement. Some of our clients were competitive athletes in university, and then they get in working, and they're not Olympic athletes, but they finish their competitive career. Other clients of ours are, let's call them recreation athletes, doing a 10K here, maybe a marathon there. And there's a commitment to that regardless. And so at some point that stops, the commitment stops. I finished the event. I finished my university career. And then there's this transition. So we're constantly helping clients with some form or another of transition. So lots of clients that are here regularly want to go do something, and then they take a break from it. Others don't even know that they're taking a break. They just stop, but maybe they've stopped for 5 years. And so using that experience of yours, it's obviously you're at the highest level of athletics going into a transition period. What did you do to keep up with some health wellness that may be beneficial for our clients to hear about?
I kind of have a unique position because I think back when I originally retired after 2021, I was in a space where I didn't anticipate retiring. I would say when I look back, I definitely wasn't ready for it. I thought that I was going to keep playing, but just with some of the partner change ups and where I was at, and an opportunity to go into coaching, I felt at the time that was the right choice, but I wasn't ready, and I just hadn't prepared in a way where I was like thinking really like, okay, what's right next for my career, and then also like physically, what am I into? So I knew that I wanted to still be active, and I am somebody who always enjoyed being in the gym and working out. That doesn't mean I loved it every single day, but it was still at that point, I think because I had kind of stopped from beach volleyball a little bit abruptly. Getting into the gym was sort of that outlet for me. And then kind of this time round, as I head into retirement, I haven't retired yet, but it's coming soon. I think I knew that it was coming. I kind of said, okay, I'm just going to come back for 1 year kind of thing. So have been more mentally prepared to prepare for that, just outside of sport wise. But then also, what does that look like in terms of being physically active? And yeah, I want to be in the gym, and I like doing that. But also, okay, where's my motivation? Because it absolutely, yeah, it's not there every day. And then it's finding, for me at least, it's finding, that community, whether it's my fiance saying like, hey, can we just go to the gym together? We don't have to do the same workout, but like just getting me in through that door. Or maybe it is like we go and work out together, or finding an activity, or, trying new sports. Like for me, I'm like, okay, finally I can like
Try something for fun.
Totally. And like having my friends, I think having community or having like those relationships with people to do sport together, that's why we love team sports, right? And so just finding people to say like, hey, want to go play like pickleball together, or want to go try a tennis lesson, or let's go snowboarding this winter, kind of those activities. But I think it ebbs and flows, right? Everybody's motivation, even as, a high performance athlete. And it's okay with that. Sometimes it's just, all right, this is what I've got today, and being okay with that, or recognizing, yeah, it's okay to take some time away because you realize how much, you do miss it or you do love it. And so, yeah, it's just been something I've been thinking about a lot, as I am towards the end of my career, and what interests me, and like, is it something where I want to get into something else competitive? Do I still have that spirit in me, or is it something I want to do more recreationally? Like, just speaking even with my fiance, like, he's someone who needs that, like, okay, I need a competition to sign up for to like get me into the
get
gym.
Motivated. Yeah.
And that's not my style, but maybe just recognizing like
what's your style?
Exactly. Yeah. And what works for you.
I love your focus on the fun stuff. And I think that is such a huge element for people. Like if you get like if you get deconditioned and you're deconditioned, generally speaking, people have this, it's going to be such a long journey. But if you tack on something that's fun with it, it's remarkable how short that journey
and social, because you're doing it with your friends, your fiance, which is, I think, when you were training so hard, you probably always feel like you're missing out on the social. And so it's nice to incorporate those two things together, doing something you love and doing it with your friends and family. And we do always recommend that. It's such a way better way to do it.
And that's sort of one other thing on that is when people get into sport in the first place as kids, it's not because they want to do hard training, right? It's because, hey, this thing I'm doing is fun.
Super fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's the way it should be.
I only like signed up for volleyball because all of my friends were doing it.
Yeah, we could all learn from that. What we chose when we had all the options. Women had a moment at these Olympics, and it was very exciting. We saw many, I would say, kind of next generation women who were coming back. In my sport, track and field, we saw many moms competing. They even put a nursery adjacent, and I think tennis had a nursery as well, which was unheard of. Did you notice a change, or have you noticed a change? You have a long career, starting, from obviously when you were a teenager, but what have you seen as far as women? And we are talking about this a lot more now. We're talking a lot more about nutrition and a lot more about the training techniques, and that we are not, some people say we're not small men and we need to train a little differently. And some people say, no, we get the same training effect that men do. We don't need to alter. I think there's a happy medium in between. What have you noticed over these last decades that you've been doing this?
I think as I get to be an older athlete, older woman, and I start thinking about, wanting a family of my own, I'd say more recently, I really noticed the moms like on tour and in sport, and think about how hard it is to do it not as a parent, and then to add in having your kids around. And so some of the moms, I mean, it looks different for everybody. There's athletes who have their kids on tour with them, and, they're sleeping in their rooms with them, and they're still having to breastfeed, and still, you have that, to people who have a lot of support and have their partners or who have caregivers on tour with them and who are able to, to do all of that. But it's just, I think it's incredible to see. And I think it's incredible for me as a woman to have these other athletes be role models. And I think I would always say like, I'm so impressed by what you're doing. And thank you for, like showing us all that it's possible. And so I think it's just really important to have those women be visible. And even we had our physio when she had her son. After a couple months, she brought him on tour, and she's like, I love my job and I still want to support you. And, she had her partner come and be a caregiver and still, come on tour and do her job with us. And so I think, as a woman, it was like, oh, this is so empowering that, like you still have your identity as, as a physio, as an athlete to do this. And so I do think that there are more resources available for women. And I see like in our sport, we're really fortunate because beach volleyball is one sport where men and women have equal pay,
Right.
Equal TV rights, equal number of events every year. And then they have pregnancy points. So, if you're taking time off, if for a pregnancy, then you get to freeze your points for a year and kind of
I
come
didn't
back
know
to
that.
her
That's
and sort
really
of like an
exciting.
injury. Yeah. And so I think, I'm not sure about a lot of other sports, but like to be able to have that option is
That's
incredible.
really incredible.
But yeah, I think there's still so much that needs to be done in the sport. And I think that, we're making headway for women. It's incredible to see these moms on tour. But when I think about, could I actually do it? How
Would I want
physically,
to?
exactly, how
Yeah.
physically hard
Yeah.
it would be. But then also recognizing, a lot of these moms, like they have the financial means to be able to have these people on tour. It's already,
Right.
a lot of athletes are already struggling to just get themselves on tour.
True.
So how better can we support some of the women, like when you're traveling to events and whatnot? So,
Right.
I mean, of course, the Olympics, it's amazing. And there's, there is a lot of money that goes into the Olympics and, P&G, are quick to jump on
Yes.
and, have a nursery, and that's awesome. But what about when it's not the biggest stage in the world? What about every
Yeah.
other event? So,
Every other event.
like I think it's great and we can recognize what's being done, but there's always, I think there's always more to be done for women in sport and achieving that equality.
Agreed.
Well, it seems to me
fascinating.
that with all these women's professional leagues, either starting or now having longer histories. So WNBA has been around for a long time, but it still feels like it's just started to be much more in the public eye. And more women in
More
management
money.
roles and ownership roles and those sorts of things.
Right.
Like it's bound
Coaching.
to filter into these types of programs that would be more consistent across the professional season, not just for the Olympics or big international events, which of course are very attractive for corporations and that sort of thing. But to have it part of that mix should be something that is standard practice.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are quick to highlight female athletes. But what about female coaches, and how do we keep women in sport who want to have families? Because I think there's a big discussion around keeping young girls in sport. But as a female athlete, there's so few female coaches. And okay, why is that? And I think when I think about being a coach, and I coached for a short period of time when I retired, but I think, a lot of women do leave sport to have families and prioritize that. But how do you get them back into a space where they stay in sport and be coaches or kind of like have some management roles? Because at that point in their careers, or usually around that time, is they're leaving to have families, but is there support there for the coaches as well, if the, childcare and whatnot? So I think that's also an important discussion
Agreed.
and thoughts to think about just when we think about having women in sport and having those role models.
Yeah, I like that. I do think too, I kind of get the feeling that we're in a little bit of a honeymoon phase with all this resurgence of women and coverage on women. And then all of us that were athletes know that the money changes a lot of things, and sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And it's going to be very interesting to see how these things progress. But having women as part of the conversation, not just the athletes, but it's like you said, like ownership, management, on these committees that make the big decisions. We're still really outnumbered. Hopefully we'll get there eventually.
A question for you, shifting gears a little bit. I'm curious about over the course of your career with respect to training, techniques, injury, either prevention or management. If you go back to sort of the start of your professional career, 2007 to 2011, so let's call it the first 4 years compared to these most recent 4 years, how has it evolved and changed for you? Because that's, again, something you're at a different age. Obviously, there have been advancements. that's something that I think is really cool and interesting to hear what's happened. How has it evolved?
Yeah, I think for me personally, it's been so much harder to recover. So I know that I need more time, more downtime. If I'm going from a practice to a workout, okay, I can't just like jump off the court and head right into the
Right.
gym. I need that time in between, but then I also need more time to warm up. So I feel like as I get older, I just need more time for everything, more time to warm up, more time to recover. But I think our bodies are amazing. And, my body has been able to keep up with it. It's just, I just get tired easily. And I think it just, for me as an athlete, just kind of like refined some of the things that I'm doing. I know what injuries I typically kind of have and, emphasize more of the prehab on those kinds of things. I think it's also been nice to have the support team within Volleyball Canada and work closely with, it hasn't been constant, but work closely with the people there and have some continuity of care there where they know me as an athlete and yeah, and just kind of also sharing, like, hey, some of the people in the program here are, 15 years younger than me. And,
Right.
we just have different, different needs. But it's also it's really cool to be like, oh, I can keep up with these people, with these other athletes. And, actually I have a lot more strength because I've just had that time to like build my strength. And so it's just kind of, I think, been really important to always stay in communication with our support staff and the team that kind of works with me.
Your
Yeah.
circle of care.
Did you use any of these new recovery devices like Normatec, or were you tracking more this year, like using like heart rate variability, anything like that? Did you guys make use of that, or did you stick with what you used to do?
I would say, yeah, some of those tools I've kind of have frequently used or always use, like the Normatecs. We have heart rate monitors that we use to help just monitor, like help us get to what we need to in our conditioning
Right.
and monitoring what our practices and games look like and recovery. Yeah, I think it's this fine balance between using the tools that are out there, but then not getting caught up into some of the fads that are going on. And we have like a great circle of care of people who do their research and really look into a lot of like the recovery tools and so, and supports there. So yeah, I mean, I know like ice baths are like super popular right now and everyone's loving those, right? But working with our staff to be like, this is the right time to use those, and these are not the right times
Yeah.
to use those kinds of things. Yeah, and so I think even though we're high performance athletes, you can't help but see like, oh, what is everyone doing on social media, and like, oh, is that going to help me? Like, we're still humans and like subject to influence as well.
And highly competitive.
Yeah, exactly. But remembering like, oh, okay, like let's maybe like check the validity of these things and like use the resources that we have and the people who do research and know kind of thing. So I think like anybody, athletes, or even if you're not athletes, like, just like dig in a little bit deeper and see if that makes sense for you.
What about nutrition? Did it change? Like, is there anything that you drastically changed this time? Shouldn't say drastically, but like I know even over the years, our eating has really evolved personally, just because we're learning more and the research is showing us different things. Did you change for this Olympics at all?
No, I wouldn't say I changed anything really drastically for this Olympics. Again, just working with my dietitian and like making sure I met like the energy requirements for when I like got back into competing again. I think really the biggest thing for me was just making sure I was eating like enough carbs, like, and I was meeting those needs because
You didn't just say carbs, did you? Our listeners are going to be totally freaked out.
Yeah. But I like, for me, I wasn't getting enough right after my training.
Right.
And so I found like, oh, I keep getting sick. And it was like, when I'm traveling, once I like came down, like, and had a rest time, I was getting sick. And it was so like, for me, it was like working with my dietitian. She's like, one of the things that affects your immune system is, like making sure you have enough carbs. And so, I mean, that's just an example. And it was for me, but I think even as anybody, like you said, it's like, oh, the C word. And as a woman and as somebody who's has to compete in a bathing suit, you feel so much pressure to look a certain way, but just recognizing like, but my priority is to perform and to perform well. And what do I need to do that, day in and day out. So yeah, I think my approach, and I've had almost 2 decades to get here. But it's just like overall taking care of my general health first, like eating pretty well, hydrating and sleeping, like taking care of my general health before I can really get into the nitty gritty kinds of things. And as a high performance athlete, we have those opportunities. But if I'm not sleeping well, like if I'm only getting like 6 hours a night of sleep, really like being nitty gritty about my diet, like
it's not going to matter.
Exactly.
All the training you're doing is going for naught because you're not rested well
Exactly.
enough.
So I think when people, as athletes, people are always looking for a quick fix or like, what's your secret? And, it's just like, take care of your general health first and then maybe get into some of those nitty gritty details.
I think it's such an important message for everybody is we're all looking at, the Huberman podcast, the Tia, they're answering specific questions. They're researching specific things, which is all great. It builds the body of knowledge overall. But for the most part, they would immediately go to the big nuggets,
Be
another way
healthy.
of just
And maybe
be generally healthy.
and
Sleep.
don't stress about it. Right. Which again, that's female athletes. It's hard.
But the fact that
it is hard to like be training like that and eating enough. I think like I see that all day long with track and field athletes, especially the younger ones, is that they know if their weight is down a bit, they're actually going to run faster. And we have such a difficult time keeping them healthy and changing their mindset towards health. A performance mindset makes it much easier to kind of go up and down and do more, things that are probably detrimental that you can convince yourself, oh, I should do this. They like that pre-workout. I was trying to think of what it was. I was talking to one yesterday and she broke down pre-workout to me, what was in it over the phone. I was like, we've got to get you off this stuff. It's so bad, but there's just that pressure of food is, carbs, calories, something I might want to avoid, and protein and caffeine are things that I want to, get more of. And it's such a hard thing to say, yeah, well, your health is going to go really downhill. You're going to be sick and then or you're going to get injured. And then it's, then we're kind of back to square one again because we've got to get on the bike, get in the pool, do all those things that you hate doing. It's tough. It's a really tough mindset.
It is. And I think when I think about my diet, I think about kind of like a season. We have preseason, we have in season, we have off season. And when I think about, okay, if I'm going to get like really strict about my diet, there's going to be certain times for that. And there's going to be times when I sit and have, a glass of wine on the couch and eat chocolate. I think that mentally I need that. So I think, it's so hard to be on all the time. So I like allow myself to, kind of ebb and flow with the diet because I know that for myself mentally, I need that. But then I also think there's this like weird culture around athletes and food and specifically female athletes, because I think a lot of people would see me with a glass of wine or maybe a slice of pizza and immediately think it's okay to question if I should be eating or drinking that. And what makes it okay to ask people that in general, but specifically females, specifically female athletes, you don't know what going through their mind. And I think I'm at an age where I can be like, yep, I'm fine to eat this, and have no problem responding to that. But maybe ask 16-year-old me, it'd be like, oh, then it's going then I'm double thinking.
Wrong?
Yeah, why are they asking me that? Oh, maybe I shouldn't be eating this. Totally. And then you have this guilt. And I think as so many female athletes, women in general, kind of experience a lot of food guilt. And so I think there needs to be this like cultural shift being like, don't ask people what they're eating or what they're drinking or, like that's for the expert. That's for their dietitian, like that they're working with and the coaches and their circle of care to support them, not for you, random stranger.
Yeah, I love that. I also loved reading that you do like food and you like to cook. And I think that that's such an important piece because let's be honest, like when you're burning that many calories, like it can get repetitive as to, because you don't have a lot of time. And the idea of doing it in seasons is really good too, because then when you're off, you can spend more time making things that are a little bit more complicated. And then you probably have your basics for when you're in season. But it's not easy. It's not easy for anyone to eat healthy and plan your day out and be productive and do, what we need to do, but get the fuel that we need in the best way. It's tricky. So
Yeah,
good
it
for
is.
you.
It is it is so much work. I mean, I think it's a lot of work for everybody to be like, what am I eating today? Where am I getting it from? And then, it is. And then just for athletes, and you have to kind of think about it a little bit more. And yeah, I do love to cook. And I would say that kind of cooking and exploring food really helped me like change my relationship with food in a very positive way.
I've got one more question back to you were talking about, now you require a longer warm up. Was that from a injury related experience or did that sort of come naturally through the experts that you're working with?
Both. Yeah. I think when I started working more closely on my strength and conditioning, that kind of got incorporated in. And I started to notice the benefits of it. And then, just kind of like self prescribing some of those exercises for me. And really, as I like matured as an athlete, knowing like, okay, I need these because I'm not, I'm not warm after 10 minutes, it's going to take me like 30, 40 minutes. And and then also just the health of my, the health of my knees, the health of my shoulders, is just like I'm in pain if I'm not, getting a proper warm up in kind of thing.
It's a smart approach.
Absolutely. It kills me when I see our kids or kids their age, they wake up, they've been up for half an hour and then, all of a sudden they go and sprint full speed. I'm like, no, it's okay for them. They can do that. For me, I just feel like my, one leg falls off here and then a shoulder arm falls off. It's like, wow.
It's a tough thing to teach because they don't feel it the way that we do. But yeah, the warm-ups, I love the evolution of warm-ups and that some of those boring exercises that we all need to do can be fit into your warm-up. We joke now that our warm-ups sometimes are longer than our actual workout because we have to cover so many, make sure my shoulder's tracking this way and make sure this is working well.
It's true.
Your mindset for all of this seems to be so excellent. And I think it looks to me like as a person watching you and what you did in your career, that the wonderful thing about your mindset and about accepting, all these challenges that we were talking about is that you were truly able to enjoy playing and say that this is a really remarkable thing that I'm doing. And we know that you worked with Dr. Dana Sinclair, and she's coming on to the podcast soon. So we're very excited about that. But I'm wondering if you could tell me a couple things that she helped you with that were different for this Olympics or different from when you started working with her.
Yeah, I think obviously the biggest thing for me was having the perspective of stepping away and then coming back knowing that this was, I'll never say never, but that this was likely my last Olympics and Olympic run. And so finding, just like really trying to appreciate all of that and kind of take it in, even, even when it was hard and just like I said, having the perspective, like no matter if we qualify or if we don't, I'm happy with my choice. And I think I kind of just I think I had to be because, like it was a risk. There was no guarantee that we were going to qualify. Of course, like we were going to give it our all and that was the goal. But just having to be okay with where I was, like outside of volleyball as well, really, I think gave me that perspective. To appreciate it. So I think for me, it was really like taking care of all of the other little things in my life. Like, and I think just talking about transition again, I kind of keep coming back to it, but knowing that, okay, like this is like my last run and just preparing myself for all of those things after sport. And I think that's sort of been the biggest key for me to really appreciate it because whatever kind of transition it is, if you know that it's coming, how can you support yourself to prepare for those transitions, whether it's, having kids, like when I think about, like we talked about being parents and what was that transition going to look like as an athlete, kind of moving forward, or as a non-athlete, I should say. I think just sort of, I think having that perspective and kind of knowing that it's coming, and what are those tools to help you prepare for that transition. Yeah.
Great nuggets. Like, thank you so much for joining us. Like, some of the or things that you said are really resonate with me. And I know they're particularly applicable to lots of the people that we see and come through our space every day. So thank you for sharing those and your experience overall with your career. You're a good friend of Totum's, and we'd love to see you back again.
Yeah, we're excited to see what's next.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Totum Wellness Podcast. Please follow us on Apple, Google, or Spotify and leave a 5-star review and comment. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, and please spread the word to family and friends.